So we are here today to talk about rapid web app development. My name is Corey Moss. I currently live in upstate New York near Albany, a little town called Saugerties. It's beautiful. You should all visit it. I've been a web developer for 20 years. It's a long time now. I've been building SaaS apps. Anybody SaaS apps know what a SaaS app is, right? So think of a web site that is a bit more than a brochure site. So these days you think of something like Facebook or Twitter or Yelp or basically any website that you're interacting with a lot more than just going and seeing when they're open and then going and eating, brunch or whatever. I've been building on WordPress for about 7 years now. I kind of fell into it as this is what a lot of clients were asking for and wanted back then, brochure sites, restaurants and things. And so I started learning WordPress, but I was building because I was always interested in SaaS apps. Because I have an entrepreneurial streak in me and was constantly trying to build businesses online. I was doing WordPress development during the day and then still trying to build SaaS apps at night, usually my own ideas. And about 5 years ago, suddenly lightning bolt, no, it wasn't that long ago, 3 years ago, lightning struck when I was at a WordCamp in Atlanta, Georgia. They talk funny down there. And it, sorry, did I get a disapproving groan? Yeah, okay. I was hoping I was safe being this far north, but yeah, it's true. It's true. Well, they say I talk funny, so it all works out. But anyway, so yeah, lightning struck, and it was like, wait, why aren't I building these SaaS apps on WordPress? Because at this point, Matt Mullenweg saying it even 13 years ago, WordPress had grown from a blogging platform to a CMS to basically being powerful enough to be an app platform. So that brings us sort of into the point of my talk here. What I want to try to cover today is starting from as early as 2013, Matt Mullenweg talking about how WordPress is in fact a good framework for building apps on. This talk actually started as a bit of an experiment because, like I said, I'm a developer. I'd been building SaaS apps over the last couple of years. I'd been building SaaS apps on top of WordPress, but I'm a developer. So I, of course, take the nerd approach where I'm doing it mostly by writing custom code. But as WordPress has matured and as plugins have matured, I realized that I think you can actually accomplish most of what you need to do most of the time building basic SaaS apps using plugins. So I pitched this talk and started getting into it and delivering it 6 months ago at Birmingham, Alabama. They really talk funny there. I said, okay, this can actually be done. What's interesting is in the interim, starting a couple of months ago, I started working for a company out of Canada. I'm just looking at you now. They talk like Mainers there most of the time, though he does say the oot and a boot thing. But anyway, an interesting app that this guy built who's non-technical called Harness Up, and he found a very real business opportunity, and without being technical, using all plugins, and I'll cover that today, built a SaaS app that he's got clients that sign into that enter data, retrieve data, and they pay him good money for it, enough to then pay me as a developer to come on and overcomplicate things, because that's what we developers do. So it's pretty fascinating that these days, whether you are a deep nerd like me or non-technical at all, you can use a variety of solutions to accomplish building web apps, SaaS apps, on top of WordPress. So we'll cover some of the common patterns and problems that you might encounter if you're trying to build an app on top of WordPress. We'll also talk about where WordPress is the best solution and also where it falls short. generally speaking, high level, I might throw out the names of some of the plugins that I recommend or various solutions, but what I mostly am trying to do is just give you basically phrases or names or things to look up later. I'm not going to get real deep into it because we do have a lot of stuff to cover. And then at the end, if there's time, we'll get into sort of general other considerations when you're building web applications. How many of you guys and gals are developers? How many are non-developers, non-technical? Okay. Technical-ish. I never know how to ask that question. Are you a deep WordPress nerd like I am? Do you speak in ones and zeros? Good. You probably function better than I do in society. All right, so first thing we'll do is we'll cover some business cases. Again, high level, this is kind of where WordPress shines for building web apps, SaaS apps, and then also where it falls short. The best use cases, so another piece of background I should give is over the arc of my development before I sort of became a dedicated WordPress developer, my focus, my interest was building SaaS apps and building for clients. And a lot of that came out of being in New York City for a decade, and everybody in New York is hustling and has ideas. And so I had a lot of clients that were coming to me and saying, I've got an app, Yelp for dogs, or Facebook for turtles, whatever it is. Facebook for dogs. Dogs for turtles, whatever it is. And so there are, and some of the ideas were very, very complicated and technical, and some of them some more simple. So anyway, thinking from the perspective of either you having an idea or a client having an idea for whom you are the person you are going to build the app for. Here are some of the considerations, basically, right? So evaluating the idea. WordPress is a great candidate if the app that they want to build is web-based and user-based. So what do I mean by that? Web-based being they're signing into a browser, right? So the good example would be like if you're building a clone of something like Yelp. People on their phone or on a desktop computer or laptop, whatever. Who uses desktop computers anyway? I don't know where that came from. All the cool kids have laptops now, right? But basically using a browser to sign into your application, and then also user-based where you are in fact signing into something, maybe looking at content submitted by other users, that kind of thing. Bad examples are if the idea involves a lot of APIs and lots of like reads and writes, data going in and out. So a bad example would be like if you were trying to build something like Twitter, which is still user-based, right? But you've got so much data, so much going in and out, WordPress will fall over and die. So some of the common patterns that you'll often see. Here's kind of a very simple, who knows the term CRUD? So again, for the non-nerds, there's an abbreviation of CRUD, create, retrieve, update, and delete. And this is just a very simple pattern that you often see in web app development, which is you think of it again like Yelp. So a user signs in and creates a review. Somebody else signs in and retrieves that review by reading it. The original person who wrote the review signs back in and says, I went there again this time and there was a fly in my soup, and they update it. And then the business pays you to delete it. And then thank you. I was going to give an equally cynical end to that. But yeah, where basically the business pays Yelp to bury it or delete it ultimately. But so a very simple web app or a lot of web apps follow a very similar pattern where basically you've got a landing page, home page. You might have a contact us form. You might have other marketing pages, a blog, etc. But sort of the basic things you need is a place to register the first time and then sign in the second time. viewing some sort of dashboard. Here's my data. If you sign into your banking software, you've got a dashboard. If you sign into Basecamp, or Trello or Asana, you've got a dashboard. You wanted some way to be able to view your data or other people's data. There's again that cycle of generally there's probably data created. You're viewing data. It might get updated. It might get deleted. Some of that data might actually be publicly viewable. And then you've got an admin where basically you can go in and delete the data when they don't pay their bills, that kind of thing. So that's kind of a real high level overview of, and if you think about a lot of the web apps that you might use on a daily basis, they kind of fall into this. You're signing into Facebook and you're creating, retrieving, updating, and deleting. Yelp, banking software, project management software, whatever it might be. So starting with the homepage, the easy part, right? If you're familiar with WordPress, you're probably familiar with building web pages. And so there's some of the easy ways to accomplish this are themes. There are lots of free ones. There's ones that you can pay for. There's also now plugins that are page builders, and they've come a long way. A guy named Pippin Williamson recently wrote a phenomenally long blog post. One might argue a novella, reviewing at least a dozen of the more prominent page builders. I strongly encourage you to read it if you're interested in this kind of thing. But a page builder basically will let you start with a blank slate and go in and build a page. Pippin Williamson, P-I-P-P-I-N. Pippin's Plugins. And so if you Google WordPress Pippin page builders, that's a lot of P's. You'll amazing review. And he is cornerstone might be a bit strong, but he is one of the most prominent personalities in the WordPress world, specifically from a development standpoint. If there's an opinion to follow, it's his. So anyway, page builders are an option. And then, I added asterisks. So I use Google, little digression here. I use Google Slides because I can. I don't want to pay for something else. Throughout my presentation, I tried to again emphasize basically other people's products and code that you can use, plugins and whatnot. And then the nerd option, I wound up putting an asterisk next to. There is no universal symbol, especially like in emojis and stuff, for nerds. Like, how do you denote that something is like nerd friendly? There isn't. I'm very disappointed in all of us, especially because it's the internet and nerds are kind of in charge. So you'd think we'd have I was like, maybe a little pi symbol, or nope, there just isn't one. So this is a problem we need to remedy as a society. I just want to put that out there. Anyway, if you don't want to use somebody else's theme, if you don't want to use a page builder, there's also front-end frameworks. I love Bootstrap, but there's also Foundation. There's a whole bunch of others that you can use. But basically, again, the idea being rapid web app development. So, how fast can we get there? These are all shortcuts. The next piece of that sort of website overview that you might want to build out, because it's easy, something like a contact us form. There are very, very good, many and good form builders: Ninja Forms, Caldera Forms, Gravity Forms. But basically a plugin that'll make it very easy. You don't have to write HTML to build a form that says enter your email address, what do you want to talk to me about, hit a button, and then I'll receive an email. But then if you're a nerd, there's also this thing called the post-back loop, which we will see often throughout my talk. So not only is there an asterisk, but now let's talk about the post-back loop. If you are going to roll your own, for some of us who have been writing code for a really long time, a lot of this stuff comes almost to second nature. So here's a pattern that, again, as I was moving from a general PHP developer into being a WordPress developer, I kept hearing about this thing called a nonce. Who knows what a nonce is? But basically, coming to understand this pattern made at least custom building web apps and just general website interactions in WordPress so much easier. So I'll go over it real quick. Basically, however you can, you build an HTML form. HTML should be capitalized. I'm a bad nerd. But basically, however you can, using a form builder or writing actual HTML, you get a form on a page. So you've got a couple inputs, one that says what's your email address, one that says what do you want to talk to me about, and a submit button, right? When that form gets submitted, it gets posted back to the website, right? So the website's receiving it. Also on that form, you have this thing called a nonce, which is just basically a little unique key so that when the website receives that form that's submitted, it listens for this nonce and it decodes the nonce and says, oh, okay, so it was the contact form that was submitted, not the registration form or not the login form. You know, I should do something. So basically, you catch that nonce, you do some sort of process, and then you redirect the browser somewhere else. So if I submit a contact form, it submits to the website says, yes, they submitted the contact form, I want to send this message with this email address to Corey, and then I'm going to redirect them back to a thank you page. That's basically the post-back loop. But the post-back loop is, if you're going to build your own, if you're going to write your own code, this is basically the easiest way to accomplish most of the things involved in building web apps if you're not going to use plugins. So now we get into a little more of the thing that makes a web app, which is users actually interacting with the website more than, you know, because often on a normal blog or a brochure site, you might have a contact us so that you can say, why do you open at 11 for brunch? Everybody knows that you should open at 9. Or if you're in New York, you don't need to open till 1. But here's where you actually want users to be able to sign into the website in order to do something, right? So starting kind of at the top, there are now actually membership sites are becoming more and more popular, more talked about, and WordPress is becoming a better and better solution for them. Membership sites being a site that you know, ideally paid users are signing into and then interacting with each other based on some sort of common interest or whatnot. It's a neat way to make money sometimes. But so there are now very sophisticated membership plugins that will actually take care of this for you, that'll make it very easy to add user registration and user management without you having to do anything. Less feature-rich are just basic user registration plugins, but what it does is, so instead of somebody having to go to a WordPress, you know, sign-in form that looks very WordPressy, if you're trying to make a website that doesn't look so much like WordPress, there are plugins that make it really easy to basically add user registration, you know, to a normal WordPress page. My favorite is social login. Lots of nerds groan and grumble about social login. Why should I give all of my information to Facebook? The truth is most of the rest of the internet doesn't care whether they should or not. That's a different talk. I think they're having it at 3. That's a joke. But you know, my mom, who I use all the time for beta testing most things that I build because she is not tech savvy, loves social sign-in, right? She clicks the Facebook button, she's signed in. She doesn't have to remember an email address or a password. And the last stats that I saw that I'm making up on the spot, like most people make up statistics, is 70, that was also a joke, 70 to 80% of the rest of the internet actually prefers social sign-in, right? And then if you want to go the nerd option, you've got the native login, well, it's only half nerd, right? Using the native login page in Form, there are lots of plugins that'll let you customize, you know, the built-in WordPress registration forms. And then what was interesting is, like I said, I just recently started working for this company, this product, this website a couple of months ago, and this the founder, who is generally non-technical, chose to use multi-site. So basically every client, instead of signing into a single website, signs into a multi-site instance. So they get their own little WordPress website, all hosted on the single WordPress site, which is another interesting way to handle user registration. I never thought of that, and I'm a nerd.
Is that clear to everybody else?
Oh, sorry.
When you say multi-site, what is that?
Okay, so WordPress. Are you familiar with WordPress multi-site? Okay, so within a single, what it was originally built for, right, is if you have a network of blogs, when we used to think of WordPress really only as a blog platform, you originally, when we didn't have multi-site, if you had a network of blogs, you actually had to reinstall WordPress over and over and over again. And then WordPress added multi-site, so you only have to have one version of WordPress installed, but it can actually power lots of different websites. And so now, thinking of from the perspective of WordPress, or sorry, of web apps, you can use multi-site, and let's say you have lots of different teams that are signing into your web app. Give each one of them a website off of a single WordPress install, so that you've only got to maintain, if there's an update, you only have to update one website. But there's a natural separation of data that happens with running a multi-site instance. Thank you for speaking up. Okay, so then there's kind of the part that you as the website creator are in charge of, really in charge of, which is protecting the admin, so that you can go in and manage users and manage accounts and manage updates and install plugins and all that kind of stuff. But you don't want your average customer to be able to sign in. So again, there's membership plugins that'll handle this stuff. There are specific plugins dedicated to restricting the admin, usually based on user role. So like if you're letting people sign up to your website to use it as a web app, you probably are not, I'm hoping you're not going to let them be an admin, because then they've got access to everything. You might assign them to either a custom role or subscriber or something real low level. And then there are plugins that'll say, well, if when a user signs in, if they are not an admin, don't show them these things. If they are a subscriber, only show them these things. And then here's where, from the code perspective, it's actually really, really easy to add this stuff. In your functions PHP, 3 or 4 lines that just says if they sign in and they're not a role, redirect them away from, if they're trying to see the admin, don't let them see the admin. Protecting pages. A lot of it is the same. Same plugins will let you accomplish this, and a slight tweak of the same code will also let you accomplish this. Even within your theme files, if someone's trying to go to a page called dashboard, above the little bit of header code, you say, if they're not supposed to see this, don't let them see this. Redirect. WP_redirect is your best friend here. But again, there are membership plugins that'll kind of handle all of this stuff. And then there are, this is, it's not a pun, but it's almost a specific reference to same guy, Pippin Williamson, actually has a plugin called Restricted Content Pro. But restricted content is kind of the phrase to look for. There are a number of plugins that will let you restrict content, put it behind a paywall or whatever you want to do. But again, requiring some sort of sign-in or user registration. So now we get to the fun stuff. What actually makes a web app a web app? Dramatic pause. So you want to capture data. You want somebody to be able to sign into your Yelp clone, your Facebook clone, and then actually post updates, right? So here's where, again, you need some, usually you're going to use a form. Again, if you're, since we're talking about rapid web app development, the easiest way to collect user data is a form. Form builders. And it's, again, to re-emphasize the point, form builder plugins have come so far, and there's so many of them, they're so powerful. It's, even as a nerd who likes to have control, most of the time I will just use a form builder at this point. It's just faster. You also have the option of, this is sort of the middle nerd option, adding a custom post type, which you can do, again, with a plugin, or there's a website called Generate WP that lets you just generate the code and then stick it on your functions, PHP or wherever. Excuse me. And you don't really have to know what's going on. You can just answer some questions, which is very nice. And then there's a plugin called Advanced Custom Fields. There's a few plugins that'll handle this kind of thing, but basically, you've got a thing, you've got a post or like a Facebook post or a tweet or whatever, a recipe, whatever it is you're going to call it. Yelp, you've got a review, right? So you might add a custom post type for a review, and then Advanced Custom Fields will let you add other attributes. How many stars do you rate this? Was there, are there flies or no flies? Is it vegan friendly or not vegan friendly? I guess if there were flies, it wouldn't be vegan friendly. But something like Advanced Custom Fields, most of the time we think of it as a way to add, like if you sign into WordPress and you're looking at your blog post edit screen, ACF, Advanced Custom Fields, will let you add these other fields. It actually has functionality that lets you put all of that on the front end. So if you've got a dashboard page that you're showing to the user with a couple of little bits of like shortcodes and that sort of thing, you can actually show all of those fields on the front end and use them to collect data. And then again, if you're a control freak like I am, once again, our post back loop rears its ugly head where, again, you'd get a form on the page somehow, has a little nonce in that form, submit that form, you'd write some code on the back that would say save this as a post or do whatever it is that you want to do with it, and then redirect them back to their dashboard where they would now see their post. This one is interesting. So right now they've submitted their review of the restaurant. They have added their new project. They have tweeted their first tweet, whatever it is, they want to see it, right? When I first wrote this talk 6 months ago, maybe more, this was actually a real challenge. And what I've learned sort of since then is a couple of things. One, page builders have come a long way to not only are you adding, you might use a page builder to add static content to a page, but now a lot of them will actually handle dynamic data. And then, again, I started this new contract a couple months ago, and what he had done was paired Gravity Forms with another plugin called Gravity View. You might see where this is going. You can view that form submitted data. So basically what he had set up was simple forms where users could submit their data, and then when they signed in another time, they'd see that data and do what they do with it as they needed to. So at this point, the loop is actually completed using nothing but plugins, which is kind of cool. All of this, again, in the context of rapid web app development. When you get to the point where you want to get really complicated with the data, you're going to start having to add code. But at least to get started, you can now do everything with plugins, which is kind of amazing. And then the post-back loop. So kind of revisiting all this stuff, to build a homepage, to build other marketing pages, you might use a theme, you might use a page builder. To protect your admin, again, you can use a plugin or just a few lines of code. To capture user registration and then to let users log in again. There are membership site plugins. There are dedicated user registration plugins. Or you can customize the built-in registration and login pages. Oh, we missed contact. For contact forms, generally you're going to use a form builder. And something like Ninja Forms, the free version out of the box, the example that it comes with is actually a contact form which will send you an email. So you literally just have to activate the plugin and you're done. Once you're signed in, you've got a dashboard. Initially, you want users to submit some sort of data. So again, you're going to use a form builder, or can use a form builder, excuse me. Once they've created some of the data, they want to view it. or show it to other people. Again, at this point, you've got plugins like Gravity View, or you can use a page builder to pull in that dynamic content and display it to the user. And you've built a web app. So other considerations, since the nice gentleman just told me that I still have 10 minutes. Dramatic pause. What are we talking about? Okay, so code organization, and I know code is a loaded word, since a lot of what we're talking about is trying not to write code, to use plugins and other people's code for making this, to accomplish all this stuff as fast as we can. The emphasis here is on other people's code. So at a very high level, use somebody else's theme, use somebody else's plugin. If you have to, go to GitHub or Generate WP, copy and paste other people's code. The idea here being, rapid web app development, trying to accomplish, just get your idea out there so that you can already get people signing in and using your app, right? If you're going to actually be writing code, there's skeletons, right? So there's at least code bases that accomplish a lot of the work for you, that will create the pages, or have the code that will capture those postbacks and whatnot. And then keep it simple, stupid. Again, use themes, use other people's code as much as you possibly can. And then this is where, again, the postback loop, once you understand that, it's a pattern you can use over and over and over again, and it works for a lot of things. Everything from contact forms to users submitting other data. For the actual development part, you've got a lot of more and more shortcuts now. There's this thing called WP CLI, which you get into terminal, and once you set it up, which is is truly a nerdy process. But what that lets you do with single commands that you type in, create entire WordPress installs just with a single command, or reset databases, or install plugins and themes. It just makes a lot of things very, very easy. There's these workflow managers, helpers, called things like Grunt and Gulp, and there's a bunch more. I only really recommend these if you're already familiar with them. Like the project that I'm involved with, like I said, he's non-technical, but he worked with a developer very early on who was like, oh, that's him adjusting his glasses, or pocket protector, adjusting his pocket protector, right? And he says, well, you have to use Grunt because all the cool kids use Grunt. So now he uses Grunt. He kind of only sort of knows what Grunt is or does. It's great because I'm a nerd, so I come in and I'm happy to be using it. But again, I don't know that it's something that he should have used from the beginning. And then if you're a real nerd, and especially if you're coming from a PHP background, there is the it's not even a debate really, but you can just write PHP code. You can write non-WordPressy code in various places in WordPress, and it's considered non-WordPressy. It's kind of the wrong way to do it. But again, if we're talking about accomplishing things quickly, I always hate saying this because I would boo if I was in the audience. But writing code in the wrong place just to accomplish what you need to accomplish, just get it done. It works. So that's headless refers to people biting my head off. No, I'm just kidding. Headless refers to basically running code within WordPress without the overhead of WordPress. So you're kind of running it headless. You're running it without WordPress. So then often when you're developing this stuff, you're developing it locally. You're developing it on your computer. But then, of course, you've got to get it out onto the internet so that other people can sign in, so your mom can sign in and tell you how cool you are and send you your allowance via PayPal. What's the easiest way to accomplish most of this is, again, working in one place, working locally, working on your local machine. it's not cool to FTP anymore, but doing this thing called FTP, where basically you just send your code, upload your code to the server manually, which has certain risks. But again, it's often the quickest way to do it. There's also a service that I love called Deploy HQ, and there are a couple of others that accomplish the same thing. Takes a little bit of setup, but once it's set up, basically every time you make an update, it'll automatically push changes to your server. So it even saves you having to sign into an FTP and upload your files. And then the age-old problem of once you actually have some users, signing into your website, creating accounts, creating data, and you've got a copy of the website locally, how do you make changes back and forth, back and forth? There's a great plugin called WP Migrate DB Pro. Even they don't like the name, but it works beautifully. That one actually costs money, but that'll let you sync your databases back and forth, so you don't accidentally overwrite your mom's account, and so then she calls you angrily on Sunday night. Again, in the context of rapid web app development, these are nice to haves. Adding Ajax, which is fanciness that I won't go into if you're not familiar. If you are familiar, I'm going to tell you, just don't bother. Add it later. Using the REST API, it is well integrated at this point, but it's still got a long way to go. Usually there's an easier way to accomplish what you need to accomplish. Add it later. And then custom APIs, again, add it later. Nice to haves. So that kind of covers, hopefully, enough to get you started, high level, if you're going to try to build web apps rapidly on WordPress. We have a couple of minutes for questions, but just so you know how to get a hold of me, I still don't really understand Twitter. I mean, I understand it from a technical standpoint, but I don't really get anything out of it. But if you do, tweet at me and explain it to me. But you can also ask me questions. But I'm an email person, so feel free to send me an email. Questions?
You have to do those tweets at 3 a.m.
My mom tweeting at me, "You deleted my account. What the heck?" Anyway, any questions?
In those words?
Yes.
What's this going to look like in 2 years?
That's a great question. Honestly, I think a lot of it's going to be even easier to accomplish. More and more people are talking about this stuff, talking about using WordPress, how much it's graduating. I think more and more people are going to be using it for mobile development. In fact, I've got a couple of projects that the next thing we're doing is mobile development. The other thing I think that's going to happen is we're going to see, because of the things like the REST API, we're going to see more and more of a separation between like front end and back end. So you'd have that WordPress install that you'd still sign into to manage users and whatnot, but you'd have a completely separate code base over here that has nothing to do with WordPress. But that's still kind of, still requires a fair bit of technical knowledge. I still think that we're going to, at least for a weekend, like if I've got an idea for Yelp for parakeets or whatever, like I'm still going to do a lot of these same patterns, using more and more of other people's code, but using other people's code, installing basic plugins that accomplish what we need to, and then being able to put it out there, by Sunday night, just to see what people think of it, MVP, minimum viable product. Like that's kind of the idea here.
Do you have an opinion of like the Backpress project for growing sort of past, like if you started Rapid Web App using WordPress, sort of transitioning into a more custom system?
That's I think inevitable, and I guess I don't. If I didn't emphasize it here, this is minimum viable everything, right? And so I think it's inevitable that fairly rapidly, if you get any users, if people are able to accomplish that they want to accomplish, that you're going to have to start adding custom code, integrating with other custom systems, hiring developers if you're not a developer, and growing it to add that special sauce. But I don't think any of this hurts you. I don't think any of this. If you start to hockey stick and you're a unicorn and all the other buzzwords, that this hurts you, that you then have to, wipe it off the table and start over. Any last question? Cool. Thank you very much.